had been a few weeks since Mike's encounter with the wolf. The escaped animals had been captured and returned to the Soder Zoo, but to Mike's dismay, the other engines were still teasing him. Oh no, here we go again. Mike groaned to his driver as he saw Rex backing up to collect some passenger carriages. Rex had a sly look on his face. He had spotted something on the platform, which gave him an excuse to tease Mike. Woof, woof, he barked. Be careful, Mike. There's a little dog on the platform. You might want to be careful around there. Oh, shut up, Rex, snapped Mike. His driver coupled him up to his ballast wagons and he puffed away, all the while listening to Rex's best impression of a dog barking. As he passed the sheds, he could see Frank the little gray diesel sitting in his berth. I wonder why Frank's still there. He should have been out by now. What's taking him so long to get out? Frank was wondering the same thing. He waited and waited for his driver to come, but he never showed up and his engine remained silent. After much waiting, Frank could see the small controller walking over with a younger man in a driver's uniform. Good morning, Frank. I know you're probably wondering where your driver is, said the small controller. Well, your driver has caught a nasty flu bug and won't be coming into work today. Oh no, I hope he gets better soon. Oh, he will. That's why he's staying home. The small controller then turned to the younger man. This young man will be your temporary driver until your regular driver is feeling well enough. It's his first time driving an engine, so make sure you help him as much as you can. Yes, sir. Smile, Frank. Very good. Now I'll leave you to carry on with your work. I have some papers in my office I need tending to. The small controller turned on his heel and walked away. The temporary driver climbed into the cab and turned the engine on. That's better. Frank sighed. Much better than being left. Frank didn't finish as felt his engine starter being turned again. Hey, my engine's on. But the temporary driver wasn't listening. Instead, he had a set of headphones on and he was listening to a cassette player, so he didn't hear Frank. Luckily, a worker saw this and went over to the cab. He tapped the young man on the shoulder to get his attention. What? The young driver asked. You've already started Frank's engine, said the worker. If you keep hitting the starter, you'll damage him, and the last thing the railway needs is an engine down. Frank sighed and thanked the worker. The temporary driver opened the throttle, and the little diesel rumbled out of the sheds. Though now, Frank wasn't so pleased to have this temporary driver. He felt he was going to cause nothing but trouble. Sadly, he was correct, due to him listening to music and nothing else. He and Frank had numerous mishaps during the day. Once, Frank was shunting empty ballast wagons for Bert to collect, but ended up pushing the miniature blue engine for a 100-mile joyride. "Oi, watch it there, Frank," cried Bert. Another incident involved the chute. They were pushing ballast wagons up the chute, but were going too fast and would have hit the buffers. Luckily, James had been watching from the ground and sounded his whistle. The driver groaned and stopped the train. "What's the big idea? I was listening to my favorite part of this song." "You were about to fly off the chute," called James's driver. Says you, we stopped with space to spare. James and his crew felt sorry for Frank. Later, as Frank was shunting empty trucks into a siding, the driver was focusing on his music again and made two of the trucks crash through the buffers and onto the ballast beyond them. "Oh, great!" groaned Frank. "Another mishap! Now I wish I had stayed in my shed." Luckily, the small controller didn't blame Frank for the incidents. He instead blamed the temporary driver. "This is a railway, not a music venue, young man," he said firmly. "You must pay more attention to your work, or you'll cause an accident. To prevent any more incidents, he asked the driver to hand over his tape player. "Sir, I can't. My dad gave this to me a month ago. He said it was expansive." The small controller sighed. "Fine, you can keep it, but don't play the music when you're working. Do I make myself clear on that?" "Yes, sir, perfectly." But the temporary driver wasn't going to obey those orders. He figured he could play his music whenever they weren't in the yards. That way he'd never get into trouble. He was soon to be proven wrong. The next day, the driver arrived to get Frank ready for work at the mines. This time, he started Frank once and they collected empty ballast wagons without knocking any over. Maybe he has learned, Frank thought to himself. With the road clear, Frank rumbled away to the mine. However, during the course of the journey, he could feel his engine working harder and his speed increasing. Driver, maybe we should slow down a little bit. I'm not liking this speed, and you're overdoing it with my engine. But the driver wasn't listening. He had his headphones on again. He did take them off, though, when they reached the mine, much to Frank's relief. Sometime later, Mike arrived and the two engines went to work in collecting ballast and putting the trucks together into long lines. As they worked, though, Mike could see that Frank's train was getting to be too long. "Frank, you might want to leave some of those wagons for another engine," Mike advised. "You could damage your engine pulling that lot." "Tell that to my driver. He's the one in charge." But the driver didn't want to leave the trucks for another engine. He wanted to take all the trucks at once just so he could have more time to listen to his music. Soon, Frank had a long line of 17 loaded ballast wagons. "There's no way Frank can pull all that alone," said Mike's driver. "Leave some for." But Frank's driver wasn't listening. He already had his headphones on, and the volume was up high. It was so high that Mike could hear the music for himself. He'll lose his hearing before he gets into his 30s, he thought to himself. Once coupled up, the driver climbed back into Frank's cab and revved the engine loud. Slowly, the train began to move. "It's too heavy. Stop, please," cried Frank, but the driver didn't. As they rattled along the line, Frank pleaded with the driver again to stop revving the engine and leave some of the trucks for another engine. But the music was too loud, and Frank's words were drowned out. Worse still, he could feel his engine overheating. "Please stop!" Up ahead was a part of the line with dried-up grass. Due to summer heat, the grass had gone from beautiful green to a light brown color. Frank soon came upon that section of the line. His engine was still revving like crazy, which was making it hotter and hotter. Smoke could now be seen coming from the engine, but the driver still didn't notice. Then it happened. A small fire broke out in the engine. "Driver, we got a problem!" But still the driver wouldn't listen. He didn't slow them down until the flames started growing and thick black smoke began to appear in front of the windows. Scared out of his wits, the driver finally stopped the train, but instead of putting it out with the fire spray, he just grabbed his tape player and ran off. "Hey, what about me?" cried Frank. The flames started to grow, and worse still, they started falling down from him and onto the dry grass beside the line. Within moments, the grass was up in flames. Oh, this isn't good. Luckily for Frank, Mike was heading back to the yards with his ballast trucks. He wasn't looking forward to returning as he knew Rex would have another doggy joke for him. That thought soon disappeared when both he and his driver saw flames up ahead. Mike's driver grabbed the radio telephone. "There's a fire along the line at." "Frank's up there," cried Mike. As the driver slowed Mike down, he could see the last truck of Frank's train up ahead. Mike called out to the diesel, "Frank, you need to move. There's a fire near you." "I'm aware of that, but it's on me, and my driver's run off." "He did what?" Mike exclaimed. He then called to his own driver. "We need to get Frank out of there. But Mike, you won't be able to move him in your train too. Frank's got 17 trucks, and you have 6. "I'm aware of that, but I'm willing to try." The driver gave in and opened the regulator. Mike buffered up behind Frank's train and started to push. At first, the trains didn't move. It seemed almost hopeless. But with much hard work and determination, Mike pushed and pulled the trains with all his might and didn't stop till they were clear of the dry flaming grass. Frank and his trucks were safe. Once clear of the spot, Mike's driver quickly ran up to Frank, put his own fire out, and shut down his engine. Once done, he phoned control of the situation. The fire brigade soon arrived on the scene and put the line-side fire out. The small controller sent Jock and Bert to help Frank and his train to the yards. Mike followed close behind. They soon arrived at the yards where they found the small controller waiting for them. He first spoke to Mike. "Well, in spite of the odds, you certainly came through when we needed you, Mike. You and your driver are real heroes today. Well done." "Indeed they are. A true firefighting team," called Rex from the nearby station. "And it's fitting to since Mike's read like a fire engine." Instead of getting cross, Mike had to chuckle. The small controller and some workmen went to inspect Frank. His engine was in bad shape. "We'll send you to the works where they'll give you a complete repair." "Thank you, sir, but what about my temporary driver?" "Oh, don't worry about him. I got a few things to say to him." And he said it when the driver finally arrived back at the yards. None of the engines heard what was said, but they could only guess it was harsh. They also learned that the young man was fired from the railway and charged with destruction of railway property. Maybe next time he'll learn to work more and listen to his music less.